Welcome back to the Transfer Show. It's time to go around the clubs now. Here's your bite-sized Premier League roundup. Dharmesh, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mark. Marseille remain interested in Arsenal forward Eddie Nketiah, but have an alternative target if they cannot agree a deal.
Aston Villa have held initial talks with Feyenoord over the potential signing of Lucharel Hertralde.
Bournemouth have had an offer rejected by Porto for striker Eva Nielsen. Bournemouth deciding whether to go back in with an improved bid.
Napoli midfielder Jean Cajuste is having a medical with Brentford ahead of an initial season-long loan move. The agreement between the clubs includes an obligation to buy him for £10 million.
Napoli are expected to go back in with another offer for Brighton's Billy Gilmore. Brighton rejected an initial approach worth £8 million last month.
The deal to sign Samu Almirodian from Atletico Madrid is currently off. It's thrown into doubt. Conor Gallagher's moved from Atletico. Chelsea now working on a potential deal for João Felix to rescue that Gallagher move.
Yeah, Crystal Palace looking at centre-back options if Mark Guehi leaves the club.
Everton forward Dominic Calvert-Lewin is one of a number of forwards that have been discussed by Manchester United in this transfer window. As it stands, it is not a priority position and United are unlikely to reinforce in that area unless there are sales.
Fulham remain in talks with Crystal Palace over defender Joachim Andersen. Interest also retained in Aston Villa's Diego Carlos.
Now Ipswich have signed 6 players so far in this window and are among the clubs interested in signing Calvin Phillips from Manchester City.
Sky Germany are reporting Leicester City have an agreement with Bayer Leverkusen for their forward Adam Klosek. It's on an initial loan with the option to buy for around £17 million if Leicester stay up.
Liverpool are still waiting on a decision from Real Sociedad's Martin Zubamendi. The player is considering his future with a £51 million release clause in his contract.
Julian Alvarez has completed his £82 million move to Atletico Madrid. It's a club record sale for Manchester City.
Now, the Bayern Munich pair of Nusayr Mazraoui and Matthias de Ligt have been having their medicals at Manchester United today.
Newcastle United have returned with a third offer for Crystal Palace defender Mark Guehi. Crystal Palace considering the bid.
Now, Nottingham Forest are reportedly close to signing Paraguay international winger Ramon Sousa. Nuno Espirito Santo is also targeting another centre-forward.
Hoffenheim have agreed a £12.8 million deal with Southampton to sign their defender Armel Bella Kochab. He'll have his medical on Tuesday.
Mikey Moore has signed his first professional contract at Tottenham. He turns 17 on Sunday.
Aaron Wan-Bissaka has been having a medical today ahead of his £15 million move to West Ham United from Manchester United.
Wolves are currently in talks with Nantes over a potential deal for the 18-year-old centre-back Bastien Payet. At the moment, he has just 1 year left on his current contract.
So then here to discuss that top 50 list, Frank Leboeuf is with us, Don Hutchinson, Stevie Nicol. Let's start with a simple question. What makes a good manager? When you were managing, Stevie, what did you try and be? Or how...
I think the first thing you have to do is know your players. Know your players' character, know your players' abilities, know what they're good at, what they can't do. And that's before you even go anywhere near the field, because you can't put a team together and put pieces of the jigsaw in place if you don't know what the pieces of the jigsaw are capable of. And so, for me, absolutely right out the bat, you have to have an appreciation of figuring out what players are all about.
What were the worst traits that you came across from managers, Don?
Probably a selfish manager. Probably a manager that thought it was all about himself rather than the team. Maybe, to Stevie's point, a manager asking players to do things that we probably weren't ready for. Probably right. Bertie Vogts comes to mind. Legendary German player, legendary German manager. Won the World Cup as a player and manager. He got the Scotland job. And he was probably asking us to do things that he knew the German boys could do, but we weren't ready for it. So, yes, he was a brilliant manager, but I agree with Stevie. I think you've got to try and adapt to the players that you've got.
Frank?
Yeah, that's the key. Adapting to the players. That's where you're smart. And you know the group of players that you have. You have to handle the player who won't play. That's the most difficult things, to make sure that they're not going to reject you. And when they're gonna come on, you know they're going to give their best. And then, yes, adapt to the players the way you know they can play their best.
If you take a look at the list, Ten Hag comes in at 34. It's interesting because the managers above him on this list, for example, Thomas Tuchel's there at 12, obviously, was rejected ahead of keeping Erik Ten Hag. Was it the right decision, Don, do you think, to keep him?
I think just about, in the end, because you've got a manager in place who has won a couple of trophies. He knows the dressing room, he knows the culture, he probably knows the players which he wants rid of, or the club want rid of. So, yes, I think there's probably better names on paper that you could have brought in, and Man United fans would have probably thought, yeah, that's great. But I think in the short term, and Jim Radcliffe and the hierarchy's brand new tenure, it maybe makes sense just to keep him in place for one more season to see how he goes.
What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, don't forget that behind a coach, you have a human being, you have somebody who tries his best to make the team better. And I'm pretty sure that Erik Ten Hag tried to make his team better. He had lots of injuries. Maybe he has to take responsibility for some of them because of the preparation that he had. But overall, he tried his best. He won the FA Cup. He has the right for a second chance, like any human being. So I think it's a good thing. Let's see what he does this year, and at the end of the year, they can decide otherwise.
You got to think that they kept him because they didn't have anybody else that they thought they could bring in. Right. It was better. I mean, there's no question. You cannot stand up and say that Erik Ten Hag got his team playing nice football, got the crowd involved, everybody loved going to Old Trafford. You can't say any of those things. And to say that he won the FA Cup, listen, there have been second division teams that have won the FA Cup over the years. That doesn't mean that the manager should be managing Manchester United. I think it's a simple case of there wasn't anybody suitable, and so Jim Radcliffe and the rest of them probably just wanted to get their feet under the table a little bit more, have a little bit more understanding before they make any sort of move. I think that's why Erik Ten Hag stayed.
Let's show you the top 10 managers then, shall we? You can argue whether it should be Pep and Carlo or Carlo and Pep, but I think most would agree the top two. Jurgen Klopp coming at 3. Arteta is there at 4, Frank. Is that high for someone, let's face it, who's only won, what, the FA Cup?
Yeah, but the way he worked with Arsenal since he signed for the club is quite amazing. I mean, he had an Arsenal not that good, and he made them, being the contender for the Premier League 2 years in a row, and they were very close to beat Manchester City, maybe the best, certainly the best team in England, and maybe one of the best teams in the world. And competing with Pep Guardiola's team means a lot, and I think he deserves some credit. Fourth, maybe not, but he deserves credit. He has been working very hard for the Gunners, and I think he's maybe at the right position, yeah.
That's rubbish, isn't it? Premier League bias. You take a look at other managers on this list and what they've achieved. Arteta's too high at 4.
I'm glad Gasperini's on the list at 8. I'm glad that they recognise the job that he's done. I think it's a little bit high. I think when you look where guys like Thomas Tuchel are...
Yeah. Like Simeone's not even in the top 10, and look what he's done.
Exactly. Champions League finals, won Serie A. I get Frank's point, and it's a good point, actually, because, what more really can Mikel Arteta do apart from win a domestic trophy? He's trying to overhaul Man City. So the chances are, when he finishes second, it's not bad. It's not great.
But he's still not the 4th best manager in the world, is he?
I get that.
Yeah, Stevie?
Yeah, I'm with you, Dan. He's not. I mean, Xabi Alonso has just taken a team from nowhere to dominating the Bundesliga, dominating it.
Yep.
And doing it in a manner that we all couldn't keep our eyes off it. So how can you possibly have Mikel Arteta ahead of Xabi Alonso? I just don't see how that's possible.
Yeah, Xabi Alonso comes in at 5 on the list, Tom.
Seems about right. Do you think, Stevie, 5th?
But it's only one season.
He'll be behind Mikel Arteta.
No, but I'm saying in terms of the number.
Oh, the number, yeah. For what he's done, yeah.
I mean, they were on for the treble at one point, weren't they? So, walking away with a double and overhauling Bayern, who had won the league, I think it was 10 or 11 times on the spin. That is some achievement. And chatting to Robbo the other day, and I asked him, I went, who's favourites for the Bundesliga this season? And he went 50-50.
Why'd you ask Robbo?
Well, he works a little bit on the Bundesliga. I'll canvass an opinion. And he went 50-50.
Yeah, of course he did. Sat on the fence.
And Liverpool were all over him.
Bit of a Shaka.
Yeah,
Shaka wasn't on. But Liverpool were all over him. So he's doing something right, isn't he?
Yeah. Frank?
Yeah, well, the guy is a genius, and you cannot deny, what he's done for a year with Bayer Leverkusen, and the way he made the team playing, the way they won games, and what they achieved in 1 year. Yeah, they will have to confirm, and maybe at the end of the next season we'll have a different view about Xabi Alonso. But you cannot say that he's one of the best coaches right now in the world. Maybe that's the only thing with Arteta and him. I will have switched both of them, but Xabi Alonso deserves to be in the first 5, yeah, for sure.
It'd be interesting to see the comments segment. I'm sure everyone agrees that this top 50 is in exactly the right order and there's no arguments to be had. Speaking of arguments, of course, you always get on ESPN FC, which you can see with us every single day, of course, as we'll be breaking down the start of the new seasons right across Europe.
Connor, who is just outside the training ground. Vinny, good afternoon to you. This is big business for United. What do we know about the timeline on these particular deals?
Well, we're as far down the line now as talking about the possibility of both players being registered in time for the season opener against Fulham on Friday night. It's been a long time coming, I suppose, in many respects, but United wanting to bolster that back line. And today we know that both medicals are underway because two people carriers with blacked out windows turned up at Carrington just after 9 o'clock this morning, taking both players into the training ground. We couldn't tell exactly who was in which car at the time, but we've have confirmation since then that both players had arrived ready to undergo those medicals. And while there's still a bit of a way to go in many respects in terms of getting those medicals completed, obviously we know that the deals are on the table for both players and agreed with Bayern Munich. So what can we tell you about those deals? Well, De Ligt would be a deal worth up to £42.9 million. That would be 38.6 million plus 4.3 million pounds in add-ons as well. Personal terms not expected to be a problem. We also know about his relationship with Erik ten Hag stretching back to his time at Ajax. Also, Mazraoui obviously has relationship with Erik ten Hag going back to their days at Ajax as well. In terms of the deal that's been struck for him, it's worth up to £17.2 million. That's £12.9 million plus performance-related add-ons of £4.3 million as well. Remember, there was a deal agreed with West Ham for Mazraoui earlier this summer, and then it fell apart because West Ham turned their attention elsewhere. Aaron Wan-Bissaka obviously became a target for them, and ironically, of course, it needs Aaron Wan-Bissaka to move to West Ham for the Mazraoui deal to go through. It all looks like that's all progressing well, but as I say, still a little bit of a way to go, but seemingly on course to be registered for those deals to go through by midday on Thursday. And if they are registered by then on Thursday, then they are available, of course, to play against Fulham in that season opener on Friday night.
Well, Vinny, as you mentioned, these players have both been linked to the club for a long time. What will they add to Erik ten Hag's squad for the upcoming campaign?
Well, I think, first of all, as I mentioned, numbers in that back line. We know the injury problems that Manchester United have had, particularly last season at centre-half and at full-back as well. And on top of that, of course, Lenny Yoro, who signed this summer, picked up that foot injury against Arsenal that's ruled him out for 3 months now. So while he's one for the future, I suppose he was also going to be an option early doors in the season. And someone like De Ligt coming in obviously gives a much more wealth of experience, albeit still at the age of 24. But when you consider that he played 100 games for Ajax by the time he left them at the age of 19, he'd been a captain under Ten Hag there. He'd won the Dutch League title. He captained Ajax to the semi-finals of the Champions League as well. Played 73 times for Bayern Munich, of course, scoring 5 goals in that time, but lost his way in terms of his form somewhat, I suppose. But United are getting a highly motivated individual who wants to rediscover his best form both at club level and, of course, in the international setup as well, to regain that starting berth in the Dutch national side. Erik ten Hag, we know, is full of praise for him. He said back in 2019 that he believed he could become the number one in his position in Europe as well. So maybe they're coming back together at just the right time, both for Erik ten Hag's career and for Matthijs de Ligt's career as well. On top of that, of course, Mazraoui, another former Ajax defender. We've seen United's need for a fullback highlighted once again, I think, by the Community Shield, with Pelestri playing as a makeshift right back in that second half against Manchester City as well. Mazraoui can actually play as both a right back and a left back. He enjoyed working with Erik ten Hag first time around. He credits him with improving him tactically, improving him attacking wise as well. He describes him as a top coach who was very important to him as well. I think Ten Hag will also be looking at it and thinking maybe Mazraoui and Anthony can rekindle that working relationship down the right-hand side that they had at Ajax, that was so productive at Ajax as well, and maybe it would help Anthony rediscover his best form as well. So, on paper, the reasoning behind the two signings looks sound, but United fans will want more than that. They want it to look sound on the pitch.
Vinny, great stuff. Thanks for that.
Arsenal delivers a transfer masterclass to Chelsea amid £282.2 million overspend under Todd Boehly. Arsenal has climbed the ranks while keeping their spending in check, offering a stark contrast to Chelsea's lavish outlay under Todd Boehly. Despite spending over £1 billion, Chelsea has seen little progress since Boehly took charge, while Arsenal has emerged as a title contender by spending far less. Chelsea's roster currently lists 43 players on the official first-team page, 14 forwards, 11 midfielders, 12 defenders, and 6 goalkeepers. While some departures are expected, such as Conor Gallagher's potential move to Atletico Madrid and Romelu Lukaku's ongoing discussions with Napoli, the sheer size of the squad is staggering. Recent additions, like Pedro Neto, only add to the bloated roster, with rumors swirling about even more signings, including a possible return for João Felix. In stark contrast, Arsenal's first-team page shows just 24 players. It's not just the size of the squads but how they were assembled that underscores the difference. Chelsea's spending has been astronomical, but Arsenal's approach under Mikel Arteta has been far more strategic. While Arsenal has also invested hundreds of millions in new players, the way this money has been spent relative to the players' market value is telling. Scott Willis, a noted Arsenal statistician, shared a comparison on X, highlighting the spending of both clubs over the past 3 summers, based on Transfermarkt's assessments of player fees and market values. Transfermarkt calculates player market value using various factors, including demand, transfer fees, salary, league, age, club, contract length, and more. Looking at Arsenal's spending on 13 players, from Marquinhos in the summer of 2022 to Ricardo Calafiori this year, the Gunners spent €494.9 million, £423.3 million, on players with a Transfermarkt value of €525.2 million, £449.2 million. This means Arsenal managed to bring in these players for around £26 million less than their market value. By contrast, Chelsea bought 35 players in the same period, excluding Pedro Neto, for €1.209 billion, £1.034 billion, with a Transfermarkt value of €883.5 million, £755.7 million. This amounts to an overspend of more than £278 million relative to market value. Adding to this, Chelsea purchased Neto for approximately €60 million, £51.3 million, even though his Transfermarkt value was €55 million, £47.1 million, marking another overspend of £4.2 million. Patience is wearing thin in West London, and with more signings expected, Enzo Maresca faces the daunting task of achieving what Mauricio Pochettino could not. Meanwhile, Mikel Arteta seems poised to continue Arsenal's rise and challenge Manchester City for the 3rd consecutive season.